Hey guys, this is Sign, and today I'm going to be doing the first in hopefully many guides on how I do things in Source Filmmaker. Today we are starting with lighting. It's a weird place to start, I know, but I feel like lighting is a very essential thing when it comes to Source Filmmaker. It can make or break any scene that you could be working on. For this example, I am going to be using Coach from Left 4 Dead 2. This is a scene that I was already working on, but I have edited for the purpose of this tutorial. So as you can see right now, our lights are currently disabled. This means that we are viewing everything inside what would be called in other Source games matte_full bright. This means we'll be able to look at everything that's going on in our scene without any shadows anywhere on the map. This is obviously very useful for posing before getting into the lights, but we will turn lighting on, which as you can see will make everything dark. Ideally you would be creating in a pure black map, but for this example we are using a map that already has some lighting in it. So, the first step, of course, is to create animation set for new light. This will give you a light. Here you can click on it and it will give you all of these settings. It may look a little scary, but don't worry, we're going to go over it. Now, you can drag and drop the light into your viewport, which mine will look a little different from yours, but don't worry, it's just a very minor adjustment. You can drag and drop it into the viewport, and then you can use the WASD keys and your mouse in order to move around the light in the scene. From here, we can go back to our camera and we'll see that a light is placed, but it doesn't look that good environmentally. So what we need to do is we need to apply colors. So right now, the light is pure white. This is not how lights work in the real world. No light is a full pure white. So, to fit our scene, we're going to go for dark sunsetty colors. You can drag these color sliders near the bottom of your light settings in order to adjust the light and its color. Once you've gotten a color you like, now we can work towards the shadow and intensity settings. These are also important. Now, a lot of this will take some experimentation, but the way that I like to do it is I like to adjust the shadow filter size to be all the way at the bottom, and then shadow attenuation, I also like to drag that to the bottom. As you can see, that shadow on the van behind Coach gets darker and darker the more I drag this down until it's pure black. Then, we need a radius, because if we view this now, the shadows are very sharp, and that's not how natural shadows would look. So, the radius slider comes in for this. Now you could just adjust it manually like this, but I like to get an exact value. To do that, double click on the radius. From here, you will have a text window. Let's set it to 0.15. I feel this is a good middle ground for having a natural light. Now, if we go here, the shadows behind Coach will become softer. As you can see, all of the shadows on Coach are now soft depending on the distance of the light. This is good. This is what we're looking for. Let's adjust the light a little more. As you can see, we're going to use the map as an example. There are lights coming from this way, so the light will be pointing at Coach from here. We'll have it about here. Now, this is a good way to show the intensity slider. This obviously adjusts the intensity of the light. Here we'll raise it up to about here, so that way when we go to render it, the light will be bright on Coach. Now, the next light that I like to put in my scenes, but you don't have to put in yours if you're just starting out, is a bounce light. Bounce lights help your scenes become a lot more realistic. And generally, you do it by copying and pasting your first light disabling the shadows on the second light by right-clicking, then selecting it, and then going to the slider that says quadratic attenuation. Drag this up to the very top, and then point it below the ground. You want it to be at pretty much the opposite angle of where the light is actually coming from. From here, we can adjust this to be a little darker. Now, once we go to the render, there's now a bounce light on Coach, and it helps keep him nice and lit up. Now, another thing that you might want is a fill light. And to show fill lights, I'm going to move our bounce light that we created down to be directly below Coach. This won't cover all of him, but it will work as a bounce light. If you want your bounce lights to have a little more contrast to them, something that I do is I lower these color values even more to get more of a stark contrast between the main light and the bounce light. Makes it look like a little bit of the ground is reflecting off of Coach. Alright, next step is the fill light. So we're going to disable these two lights that we've already created. We're going to go to our third light and disable shadows. Slide quadratic attenuation up to the max, and let's pick a good contrasting color. I say a nice purple might work with this scene, so we will adjust the values until we get a color that's like what we're looking for. Then from here, let's start with two fill lights. We'll have one to his right and then one to his left. So, to make fill lights, you just put the fill here, and then you lower the intensity to be a near black, but not quite. Paste it, and now let's move it over to his other side. This way, we'll hopefully catch all of the shadows on Coach. As you can see, once we turn our lights on, and we go to our timeline, and we go to our render view, it's working as expected, which is great. Now, here is my favorite light, the rim light. Now, rim lights are like lights on the back of a figure to help it contrast from the background. These can be very, very useful, and you shouldn't skimp out on them. But at the same time, you should try to aim to make them realistic. There are a lot of ways you can do rim lights, but I'm going to show you my favorite way. We're going to turn the shadow filter size and the shadow attenuation values all the way down, like our main light. Then we take constant attenuation and turn that on. Next we go to radius, and then we click remap slider range, which we can get to by right-clicking the radius bar. Now, you'll be presented with three text boxes: the minimum slider value, the maximum slider value, and the default slider value. Let's set the minimum to 300. This is a very big number, but you'll see why we're doing this in a moment. The max will be 320, and then the default will also be 320. Now, you want to bring your rim light into here so you can move it around, and you want it to be directly behind Coach with a high field of view, which you can adjust in the viewport by using the scroll wheel. Now, if we were to render like this, you can already see that we're starting to get some of the rims. But we can't see a lot of it right now, and that's because it's not in a good position. We want it to be in a place where it can get as much of Coach as possible. So let's just experiment with it a little. Look at that. There's your rim light. Here you can adjust the colors and then the intensity to make it match your lights more. So we're going to have it be deep orange. I'm going to lower its intensity a bit. Let's preview that. There he is. And now you can turn your lights on from the viewport bar on the side without actually having to go tab out of the timeline. You can just flick them on, and you can get a good view of your full scene. From here, you can adjust your camera settings in order to add a little bit of contrast. You can here you can do all of your you can do everything else that you need to do. You can add some props at the end. You could adjust your cameras. I'm going to adjust the camera a little bit. I'm going to grab the focal distance slider and I'm going to move it into a place where it gets most of Coach in the middle of the purple box. Now I take my aperture and I turn this up. I usually turn it up to about halfway. Now, once we go to our view mode, we can see that the background around Coach has become blurred a little. But we're not done with lighting yet. There's one more intermediate trick that I have forgotten to tell you about. Volumetrics. To get a volumetric light in your scene, right-click and create a new light. Right-click the light, and then below Disable Shadows, which we've clicked earlier, there will be Enable Volumetrics. We'll click this, and then you'll see if we tap to our work camera and then back, there'll be a giant bright white light on Coach. Now this is our volumetric light. It's basically a light with mass. You see this a lot in modern games, and Source Filmmaker has a kind of weird version of it. So we're going to work with this in an attempt to make our scene look more appealing. We'll adjust our colors the way we did our previous lights to get an orangish glow. And then we'll drag it into our viewport, we'll adjust it, and then we'll change the field of view. Now from here, we have a whole new set of options that we can actually mess with. First, get your volumetric into a position that you like. I'll go with this. Now, there's noise strength and volumetric intensity. Noise strength will dissipate your light's radius a little bit. This is useful for more realistic lighting. Volumetric intensity does exactly what it says. It's intensity, but it's just for the volumetric particle. Then we can go and actually adjust the intensity itself. You could just mess with these until you get a combo that you like. Now, we click preview, and there we go. We've already got a pretty good looking Coach just from these settings alone. Thank you for watching. I hope you found any tips in this guide useful, and I will see you next time.